In the thrilling universe of Invincible, over a dozen characters possess the sheer strength required to take down a Viltrumite. Today, we're diving into the ranking of the 8 most formidable beings in the series. Our assessment is based on 4 key criteria: raw power, resilience, tactical intelligence, and intrinsic potential, where potential refers to how easily a character, under ideal conditions, could defeat a Viltrumite. And without further ado, let's begin this ranking with the one who claims the top spot, Battle Beast. It's in issue number 135 that we finally learn Battle Beast's real name, Thok. His chaotic past is later explored in depth in a special issue dedicated to his origins. We discover that his home planet was a savage world, torn apart by endless wars between his people. However, as Thok grew in power, he became so overwhelmingly strong that he began winning every battle on his own. Ironically, this total dominance brought all wars to an end, ushering in a new era of peace and technological advancement for his species. But there was a catch. Thok, now completely addicted to battle and driven by an uncontrollable rage, feared he might one day destroy his own civilization. So, he made a drastic decision. He left his planet behind, embarking on a lone journey across the cosmos in search of a worthy opponent, someone who could finally defeat him. Throughout this journey, he claimed to have conquered 1,000 planets single-handedly, showcasing an extraordinary level of durability for his kind. In issue 67, one of his own people even describes him as immortal. His absence from their world had been so long that many began to question whether he ever truly existed. To me, that implies 2 things. First, Battle Beast is likely hundreds, maybe even thousands of years old. And second, he literally cannot die unless slain in combat. If this theory holds, it would suggest that his endless rage is actually a form of curse. In the Invincible universe, characters like Monster Girl and Duplicate gained their powers through magical curses. While it's never explicitly stated that Thok's power is magical, his bloodlust has often been referred to as a curse, one that compels him to fight endlessly until death. For years, he sought out Viltrumites, believing they were the only beings powerful enough to kill him. But he quickly discovered not all Viltrumites are created equal. In Season 1, he arrives on Earth as one of Machine Head's bodyguards. During the fight, he faces off against Invincible, unaware that Mark is a Viltrumite. And honestly, if he had known, he probably would have been deeply disappointed. Throughout their battle in the animated series, Mark didn't land a single blow. In the comic, he manages one hit, but it doesn't change the outcome. Battle Beast delivered one of the most brutal beatdowns Invincible received that entire season. If Thok had wanted to, he could have finished him off easily, but instead, he walked away, disgusted by the weakness of Earth's heroes. His next encounter with a Viltrumite came during his escape from a Viltrumite prison. This opponent remains unnamed, but was powerful enough to be selected for executing Nolan, meaning he wasn't weak by any means. He may not have been on Omni-Man's level, but the Empire wouldn't assign just anyone to such a mission. So it's fair to assume this was a slightly above average Viltrumite, and Battle Beast tore him apart without showing any signs of injury, literally dismembered him. His remains float in space by the end of Season 3. After that, he fought Thula, who, while a Viltrumite, wasn't among the strongest. Thok manhandled her with ease. At this point in the story, one might place him somewhere between Alan the Alien and Nolan. But then came his legendary battle against Thrag, a fight that changed everything. For context, Thrag is the strongest and most resilient Viltrumite alive. Thrag represents the absolute peak of Viltrumite power, and in a fair, one-on-one fight, Battle Beast nearly defeated him. Before the duel, Thrag had been injured by some alien creatures, so Thok intentionally injured himself in the same way to level the playing field. What followed was a planet-spanning clash that lasted for days on Thraxa. Some key moments from the fight. First, Thok's teeth were strong enough to pierce Thrag's skull, the same skull that broke Nolan's fingers and shattered Dinosaurus' fangs. Second, in terms of raw strength, they were nearly equals, proven by the sheer duration of their combat. In the end, Thrag barely survived. Thok fought with everything he had, but there were moments when he was overwhelmed, immobilized, strangled, and finally, he passed out. At that exact moment, Thrag crushed his heart, giving Battle Beast the glorious death he had longed for. In the entire series, no one else has pushed Thrag this far in a direct one-on-one confrontation, and based on that alone, it's safe to say that Thok would have no trouble defeating top-tier Viltrumites like Nolan, or even Conquest. Speaking of Conquest, let's talk about the one person he openly admitted he couldn't beat. Surprisingly, that person is Amanda, better known as Monster Girl. Her powers come from a mystical curse that lets her transform into a massive beast, but there's a brutal catch. Every time she changes, her physical age rewinds by making her younger and younger. Amanda's backstory makes this even more wild. The younger she gets, the more powerful her monster form becomes. For example, early in her transformations, she was so small that her beast form could squeeze into an airplane bathroom. But fast forward to when she joins the Guardians of the Globe, her monster version is huge, all because her age has been steadily regressing. Now here's where it gets really insane. In one of Invincible's alternate timelines, Amanda uses her powers so excessively that she literally reverts to a baby. Yep, an actual infant. This is the same timeline where Mohawk Mark comes from. In that universe, baby Amanda is essentially a living weapon controlled by the Viltrumite Empire. And because she's so young, her monster form hits its maximum potential, so dangerous that even a squad of elite Viltrumites can't keep her under control. We're talking Conquest, Anissa, General Krieg, and Lucan, all of them. And even with their combined strength, Conquest admits he's not sure they could stop her. In fact, the implication is they already tried to use her once, and it went so badly that Conquest doesn't want to risk it again. Anissa? She straight up refuses to fight Amanda, choosing instead to wait for the beast to pass out from exhaustion. That tells you everything. If that group is afraid of her, it's clear. Monster Girl's power is on a whole different level. It takes a full team of the strongest Viltrumites just to maybe contain her. But here's the drawback. Since she's literally a baby in this version, Amanda has zero tactical awareness. She's just pure chaos. No strategy, no control. That's the only reason she's not number one on this list. Coming in at third place, Alan the Alien. From birth, Alan was genetically engineered to be the most powerful of his species. He's a Unopan, and his homeworld was conquered by the Viltrumites before he was even born. Years later, the Unopans tried to take their planet back, failed, and eventually gave up. In desperation, their leader Marvin launched a breeding program to create someone who could match a Viltrumite in raw power. Most of the early experiments failed, until Alan was born. From childhood, he was trained non-stop, backed by the coalition of planets. But the first time he fought a Viltrumite, total disaster. Here's the twist. Alan's real strength only unlocks through near-death experiences. Thedas may have been the only one who figured that out. Alan had two of these brutal moments. First, when Viltrumites literally tore him apart, and then during a massive explosion in an assassination attempt. After the first incident, Alan's body regenerated stronger than ever, almost rivaling top-tier Viltrumites. From then on, he rarely needed to fight at full strength. In fact, he deliberately held back in battles, letting his enemies believe he was weaker than he actually was. He did this against Anissa, the Executioner, Dinosaurus, a group of assassins, and even during his early fight with Nolan. Issue number 86 is where everything came to a head. Alan confronted Omni-Man over his plan to unleash the Scourge virus on Earth. At first, he fought conservatively, but once the fight shifted to space, Alan stopped holding back. The result? Nolan, Omni-Man himself, got destroyed. And remember, Nolan has over 2,000 years of combat experience. Watching him get manhandled was rough. At this point, Alan's durability was off the charts. Even in prison, when guards tried to crush, burn, and vaporize him with lasers, he walked out without a scratch. And after the second assassination attempt, he evolved again, gaining new scales that likely made him even tougher. Not as dramatic an upgrade as the first time, but still a boost. Had that transformation been more significant, Alan might have surpassed Thrag. But most fans agree he never quite got there. Interestingly, despite multiple chances, Alan never fought Thrag. Maybe it was fear, or maybe just caution as the Coalition's leader. Either way, that battle never happened. In the end, centuries later, Alan lost to Mark. By that point, it seemed he'd gone through at least one more evolution. Bottom line, Alan could overpower nearly every Viltrumite in history, but when it comes to the absolute elite, he lands just shy of the top. So far, we've mostly discussed characters who don't represent the average member of their species. For example, the typical Unopan is nothing like Alan, just as the average human is nothing like Monster Girl. But when it comes to the Ragnars, things are different. The average Ragnar is powerful enough to kill the average Viltrumite, and throughout history, they've been a serious problem for Thrag, Anissa, and even the strongest characters in the series. Because of their planet's intense gravity, Ragnars had to evolve incredible strength just to move and jump. According to Nolan, that level of power made them nearly indestructible. But that didn't stop the Viltrumites from sending multiple squads to try and wipe them out. One scene reveals that Conquest was part of these missions, and it was the Ragnars who blinded him in one eye and tore off his right forearm. To be fair, this happened shortly after he survived the Scourge virus, and its lingering effects likely explain his unusual vulnerability at the time. Still, even without that handicap, the Viltrumites failed to eliminate the Ragnars. So Nolan proposed a different solution. Instead of fighting them directly, the Viltrumites created a massive solar disk to block sunlight from reaching the planet. This triggered a planet-wide ice age, freezing the Ragnars in place. Later in the story, two major factions ended up using the Ragnars as living weapons. First, the Coalition of Planets, and then Thrag, after being exiled from the Viltrumite Empire. These battles showcased the Ragnars' terrifying abilities. One of their signature moves? Decapitating Viltrumites. This happened at least 4 times, and probably more. In the very first instance, Thrag actually warned his troops not to fight the Ragnars, saying they would be slaughtered if they did. Another terrifying trait, their claws can pierce even Viltrumite skin, which is famously resistant to injury. Things like bullets and blades don't work on them. But the Ragnars? One of them disemboweled Thrag in issue 115, slashing his stomach so hard his intestines spilled out. They also clawed his face, drawing blood, something even Dinosaurus failed to do, breaking all his nails in the attempt. The only real weakness the Ragnar seem to have is their lack of intelligence. They behave like wild animals, guided only by instinct. If they had even human-level intelligence, they could have been legitimate rivals to the Viltrumites, on par with the coalition of planets. Now, the fourth character on this list is Space Racer, a character who, under the right circumstances, could defeat everyone else in this video. His weapon, known as the Infinite Ray, is described by Nolan as a beam that can cut through any material in the universe. According to legend, once it's fired, the blast never stops. It continues traveling through space indefinitely. No one knows where the weapon came from, but it can only be used by Space Racer himself. If anyone else tries to wield it, the weapon magically returns to him, similar to Thor's hammer. During the Viltrumite War, he used it to kill at least 3 Viltrumites. But his most impressive feat was firing the Infinite Ray through the entire planet of Viltrum, destabilizing its core. This gave Nolan and Mark the chance to enter and destroy the planet from the inside. In Season 2, we even see him using it against a group of space sharks. And just to clarify, space sharks are one of the few species capable of injuring a Viltrumite. Physically, Space Racer is no pushover either. He fought Nolan 100 years ago and survived. Rather than kill him outright, Nolan chose to trap him under a pile of rocks, assuming he would die of starvation. But incredibly, Space Racer survived, without food or water, for over a century. According to Thedas, it was his super efficient metabolism that kept him alive. Based on how shocked the Viltrumites were, it's safe to say they wouldn't have lasted nearly as long. And when it comes to raw strength, Space Racer once knocked out Thresher, the first woman to ever make Battle Beast bleed. Even Invincible described her as shockingly strong, and that was after he'd already reached Nolan's level of power. So, even without the Infinite Ray, Space Racer is one of the most physically powerful beings in the series. And with it, he's on another level entirely. Coming in at 6th place, we've got Zach Thompson, better known as Tech Jacket. The Tech Jacket is a high-tech combat suit created by an alien species called the Geldarians. Normally, only Geldarians ever get to wear one of these things. But everything changed when a Geldarian ship crash-landed on Earth. Zach, caught in a deadly explosion, was given a Tech Jacket to save his life. And just like that, he became something no human had ever been before. Now here's the key. The Tech Jacket doesn't just protect you, it amplifies your strength. The stronger the wearer, the stronger the suit becomes. And since humans are naturally stronger than Geldarians, Zach instantly became the most powerful Tech Jacket user in history. His version of the suit was also custom designed for warriors, meaning it came loaded with combat functions and adaptive features that respond to whatever threat he faces. In Invincible Season 3, Tech Jacket went toe-to-toe with Mustache Mark in a brutal fight that lasted over 30 hours. Their battle kicks off right at the start of the Invincible War and doesn't stop until the end of Day 2. When it's all over, Tech Jacket kills him. And what's wild is that Mustache Mark was a trained Viltrumite. You'd think that would give him the edge, or at least some superior training compared to the original Mark. But no, he gets absolutely demolished, down to having every finger broken. Brutal. Now, comic readers will know that Tech Jacket's experience during the Invincible War played out very differently. There, he was ambushed by 2 Mark variants at once. He couldn't escape, so he dumped all the energy from his suit into its battery. It overloaded, exploded, and vaporized both Invincibles in the blast. Even though those 2 were weaker than the real Mark, that's still insane. Viltrumites survive massive explosions all the time, even city-level ones. Later, in issue 71, Zach joins the Viltrumite War after being invited by Alan. Over the next 10 months, he holds his own. He makes a Viltrumite bleed in combat, blasts down a Ragnar using lasers, fights in multiple unseen battles, and even takes on the last remaining Viltrumites. In that final showdown, he claims to have taken out several Viltrumites at once using poison projectiles, a great example of how versatile the Tech Jacket really is. It's not just brute force or lasers, it's a whole arsenal of tools that adapt to the fight. Still, things get dicey. While trying to poison another Viltrumite, Zach's nearly strangled to death, until Alan swoops in and decapitates the enemy, saving him at the last second. Interestingly, centuries later, when Alan's army wages war against Mark, we see Tech Jacket fighting alongside him. There's a blink and you'll miss it moment where he appears to one-shot a Viltrumite with a laser that goes clean through the body. Now, here's where things get speculative. That fighter might not even be Zach. It could be one of his descendants wearing the original jacket. That would make sense, because even though the suit has life support, keeping a human alive for centuries is still unlikely. Then again, we can't rule anything out. Zack was the first human ever to wear a tech jacket, so there's no telling what's truly possible. But if it really is Zack, and he's been fighting Viltrumites for hundreds of years, then he deserves more respect than anyone's giving him. Even if they weren't the elite Viltrumites, that kind of endurance and kill count is legendary. Next up is Hail Mary, the fearsome kaiju who clashed with Omni-Man not once, but twice. Their first encounter happened off-screen, yet it left a lasting impression. Donald himself said it was the most he had ever seen Nolan struggle in his entire 20 years on Earth. Recognizing her potential, the ever-pragmatic Cecil decided to secure Hail Mary at the GDA, keeping her cryogenically frozen as a last resort weapon. When Omni-Man later tried to conquer the planet, she was unleashed, this time upgraded to 120% of her potential. Thanks to GDA scientists, she was enhanced with performance-boosting drugs and genetically modified to feel no pain. Technically, yes, that's cheating, but you know what? I'll allow it. Because in that state, her monstrous tentacles overpowered Omni-Man. Before Mark showed up, it honestly looked like Nolan was about to be eaten alive. To be fair, Hail Mary's bite force isn't quite on par with the Ragnar's. She did struggle to bite Mark in half. And keep in mind, Invincible at that time was nowhere near his father's strength. She had the opportunity, but couldn't finish the job quickly, suggesting Viltrumite skin is still a major obstacle. That said, maybe if she had actually swallowed Nolan, her stomach acid might have been enough to melt him down. Just a theory, though. It's also possible that someone like Nolan could survive and literally burst out from the inside. Whatever the case, one thing is clear. Most Viltrumites aren't at Omni-Man's level. So if he was in trouble, a regular Viltrumite wouldn't stand a chance. And finally, we have Dinosaurus, a unique case of dual personality. On the surface, he's David Anders, an average man. But when his apathy hits its peak, he transforms into Dinosaurus, a towering genius monster. Unlike David, Dinosaurus is arguably one of the smartest beings in the series, maybe second only to Robot. He's a long-term strategist focused on solving global-scale problems like climate change, overpopulation, and systemic collapse. The catch? His methods involve massive destruction and the deaths of thousands, sometimes millions. His dynamic with Mark is complex. During their first encounter, Invincible knocked him out with little effort, reverting him back to David. Mark even considered killing him then and there, but was stopped by the arrival of other heroes. Their next meeting? Dinosaurus blew up Las Vegas, and this time, his punches actually made Invincible bleed. By then, Mark had already fought in the Viltrumite War and was nearing Omni-Man's level. But Dinosaurus' most jaw-dropping moment came in issue number 87, when he killed Omnipetus in a single bite. For context, Omnipetus is a being from another dimension who gains power by draining the energy of entire universes. He destroyed his own dimension solo. In Season 2, the Guardians of the Globe nearly died just fighting his weakened form. But in issue 87, a stronger Omnipetus returned and single-handedly defeated Monster Girl, Robot, and over a dozen other heroes. Then Dinosaurus showed up and crushed his skull like it was nothing. Just one bite. Sure, he was no match for Thrag, and his power isn't quite on par with the Ragnar's. But based on how he overwhelmed Mark in their final battle, and how easily he destroyed a biological copy of Invincible, Dinosaurus definitely earns his place on this list. And that wraps up our ranking of the top 8 characters in the Invincible universe who can defeat a Viltrumite. It really highlights just how rich and layered this world is. So many unique characters, each with the power, intellect, or sheer brutality to challenge even the mighty Viltrumites. That diversity of threats is exactly what makes Invincible such an electrifying and unpredictable universe.